Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm joined again by my co-host, Jen. Hey, Jen. How's it going?
Good to be here today on this crazy day.
Yes. A lot happening behind the scenes with technology. It has been a technologically challenged morning, but we've survived.
But luckily, our guest is so amazing that it makes up for all of the technological challenges that we've experienced.
Yeah. So today we're joined by Dana Applegate. And Dana's no stranger to my podcast. I had her on my former podcast a few times. And I was so happy, Jen, you connected with her recently at a conference and talked about the podcast again. And she was thrilled to join us again. So I'm thrilled to have her. She's one of my favorite people. And she's been in this industry so many years and has so much to say. And just overall, just a very likable person. I think we get a little bit off topic, but I think everyone will enjoy it.
Absolutely. And due to the technology issues, I got to have like a 20-minute chat with her before we started. And there's nothing better than having a nice chat with Dana because she's just such an awesome person.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Dana. Welcome to Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you.
Thanks, Meghan. Hi, Jen. Really happy to be here.
So, Dana, you are no stranger to podcasting with me, but this is your first time on Claims Never Sleep. But I think you were on my prior podcast at least twice, I believe, if not more.
Yeah, I think it was definitely twice, maybe 3 times, but yeah, definitely twice.
I think our first one was extremely memorable because it was at the beginning of COVID. I think we may have recorded like a week after everything shut down, and we were commiserating about our lives and homeschooling and open floor plans.
Yeah.
And how we were rethinking those ideas when we bought our homes about having an open concept when you had computers everywhere and everyone was on Zoom.
Yes. I remember that distinctly. We were like, what did I do? I need to buy a new house now if I'm stuck here all day in this environment.
I did. I bought a new house. I couldn't handle it anymore.
Did you really?
Yeah. In early 2021, my husband was doing telemed at home. I was like doing court hearings at home. Everything was super open. 3 kids on school. I was like, nope, we need more space.
I did too, but it was because I changed jobs. But we went much bigger. There's only 3 of us. It's, me and my husband and my daughter, and we like wound up going like much bigger than I think we needed. But at the time it felt necessary. And then now sometimes I'm like, I haven't been in that room in like 3 months.
But I felt like everyone needed their own space. Like I have my own office. My husband has his own office now. The kids have a basement. We can shut the door. But I think, COVID really like forced us to think about spacing in our house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Although I think we had spacing, but I still like would always have some kid under my desk on like they're doing school, like while I was on a call, and there was a lot of that happening. But I also have like a Velcro child, so she still does that today if she's home. So it's not a COVID thing. She just always wants to be right there. Well, anyway, Dana, I'm so happy you're back, and that we could reconnect with you, and like celebrate like your career and everything you've been through, because you've been a leader in the insurance industry for as long as I remember. I remember meeting you way back when at CLM, and I remember talking to one of the partners at my firm, and I remember him telling me, "You should get to know Dana." I was like, okay.
Oh, that's so kind.
But as you know, like one thing I like to talk to everyone about who comes on this podcast is like how you got into claims and kind of walk through your journey through claims. So like, how did you start? Like, how did you break into the insurance industry?
So, yeah, I mean, break in, kind of got forced in. I don't really know which way that goes. I was working after college. I was supposed to go to law school. That was my plan. And then I decided after I graduated that I wasn't going to go to law school, that I wanted to work, I wanted to travel, I wanted to have fun. And so I was working as a paralegal in government relations at a law firm. And I was doing that and sort of contemplating life and what I was going to do. And one of my clients was an insurance company, a personal lines insurance company in New Jersey. And so I worked directly for the managing partner of the firm. And so this guy was the president of the company. And so we got to know each other a lot because he was always kind of in our office. And he said one day, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Dana? Like, you can't keep doing this. You either go to law school or find yourself, another career. And he said, you should think about insurance. And of course, at that point, I mean, gosh, I don't even know. I was super young and I was like, I've never even read my own policies, right? I had a car, I rented an apartment, I had insurance, but I've never really looked at a policy. I just, paid the premiums. And so what did I know about insurance? And so he asked me to come and interview and do mock interviews at his company. He said, I don't have any jobs, but come and talk to some of my managers and they'll, tell you whether or not you'd be a good fit. And so I did. And the managing partner I worked for, super supportive. He knew it was happening. He's like, yeah, go take the day, go up there. And so I was working in Trenton at the time, and this location was in Hoboken. So I went up there for the day, interviewed with a bunch of his managers, and they said, yeah, you'd be great in claims. You're curious, you have a legal mindset, you like to dig into things, you're very analytical. And so I was just like, okay. And so those are the days where you would open up a newspaper and look at jobs and, and that's what I did. And, so that's how I did it. I answered this ad for a company called Amica Mutual, who's a big personal lines carrier out of Lincoln, Rhode Island, and went into their adjuster program, which was, a 7-8 week program in class, literally in class, learning policies, studying, taking tests, no joke. A lot of hands-on stuff, a lot of learning about the insurance industry. It was an amazing way to start a career in some industry for sure. And and then part of their agreement was you relocate to one of their 42 offices at the time. And I was like praying for the West Coast. I never got that. I wound up going to Long Island because they said, you're from New Jersey and we can't send just anybody to Long Island because they'll get eaten alive. So we have to send somebody who can actually handle it. But yeah, so and then I really enjoyed helping people. Like I guess I didn't know that about myself as much. I just really enjoyed, especially because I was doing personal lines to start my career and having that impact on people and helping them through a really challenging and tough time and kind of being part-time, counselor to people during the claims process. It just really spoke to me. And eventually then after a few years, I decided to move over to commercial lines. I wanted a little bit more variety and maybe a little bit more intellectual stimulation. But, and then I've varied throughout the years through corporate projects and, different assignments in different countries, but through and through, I'm a claims girl.
So, what have you seen though throughout your time of how the industry has changed?
That's interesting. I mean, there are things that have changed so much, and then there are things that have completely remained the same. I mean, I think it's a common theme these days to talk about the insurance industry still being very antiquated in their approach to things, legacy systems, things like that, a lot of manual processes still at many companies. I think what has changed the most from my perspective is the unrealistic expectations. And it's a couple of things. I mean, number one, it's kind of society and consumers and seeing, what they see on TV and what they see on billboards. And it's like this unrealistic expectation that everything happens instantaneously and everything should be super fast. And, I should have this immediately and I should have that immediately. And that's just not how it works. It's still, a very heavily regulated, compliance driven, litigious process, the claims world. And things take time. And there's really now in today's world of digitized everything and everybody walking around with mini computers in their pocket and, connected all the time, there's actually no time to think. And claims is a very highly analytical, really, you need critical thinking skills to be a good claims person. And there's just not a lot of time to think. Nobody wants to give you time to think anymore, or give the people time to think. It's just do, run. And so I think for me, that's the thing that has changed the most is I remember having time because you used to write letters and mail letters. And, you used to have not as big of pendings when I was, a field adjuster for personal lines. So you would have time to spend with your insureds when you're at their house taking a statement about the fact that half of their house burned down, right? And things like that. You were able to kind of really invest, and it feels like we don't do that anymore. And I'd like to see some sort of kind of return to that. Let's make critical thinking a retro thing and bring it back.
Yes. I agree with that too, because I feel it on my side too, because of the emails. Like you get constant emails, and there's always this pull to like have to read them and respond to them, but they often happen when I'm trying to think about something else that requires thought. And then if you look at the email, then it takes a time to then refocus back in to the thought item. And I try so hard to be like, okay, so from this time to this time, I'm gonna tackle email, and then inevitably something in the email requires thought, right? So, and it like sometimes you feel like this ping pong ball, and I agree. Like I remember I used to be able to be like, okay, now I'm going to write this letter, or now I'm going to write this brief, and a lot of it, I still was getting so much paper mail. So I was like, oh, I could just deal with my paper mail later, and you could sit down and concentrate. And yeah, some days or most days, I feel like I'm bouncing off
And what's
walls.
interesting now in the current, model and where everybody's going, all the conversation, all the usage of AI. And so I am, really going to be a Pollyanna here and say, I'd like to think that AI will give, especially claims people, adjusters, whatever, more time back in their day to kind of restore that critical thinking and, analysis process so that we're getting better results and paying more attention to flags that need to be noticed and insights. I really hope that is the best byproduct that comes out of AI. I get scared though that because we all run businesses and running businesses in the corporate world is all about making money, that it will turn into, oh, you have 2 more hours in your day now, so we can give you, 5 more files.
Yeah.
I do worry about that a lot because, that's not going to get us into a better place, right? That's just going to keep digging the hole deeper and continuing to generate, poor outcomes because people aren't spending the time that they need to really, focus on those complex or, high exposure matters.
Yeah.
Something that you said in the beginning was about the training that you had at your first job. And that's a really common theme we've been hearing a lot as people are going to like these larger carriers and having an extensive training. But a lot of these people we're talking to are, say, 10, 20, 25 years into their career. Like, I don't know, is that still happening? Like when I started claims in 2010, we got sent for 3 days to learn about a little, like, and so it wasn't like a robust program. And I almost wonder if like that's not happening anymore, because that's where you do learn how to think and like learn what the questions are that you need to ask and where the gaps are and kind of like how how to handle a claim.
Yeah, most of those don't exist anymore. I'm not really aware of any. There are some companies, I talked to some companies recently that said they're trying again, right, to kind of, bring back more of that training program, but but everyone that I've talked to is not like it was when I did it. It is now kind of, you're working, but then half of your schedule, either during the day or throughout a week or something is training and, shadowing and education focused, but you're still working. It's very different, right? I wasn't working, I was getting paid, but I was literally in a classroom, pouring through policies, going through scenarios, again, learning how to ask questions, learning which follow-up questions you need to ask based on the answers given. And so that was invaluable. I mean, and it just doesn't exist. And I agree with you that now it's, we tend to kind of just throw people in and expect them to know and then judge them very harshly if they falter. And meanwhile, it's like we didn't really set them up for success. I also know a lot of companies that say, well, we just hire experienced people. Well, that's great, but then you're bringing in a lot of experience from different areas. And so you don't have necessarily that cohesive, I'm going to use the word culture, not my favorite word, but that cohesive culture or engagement or consistency. You have a lot of veterans doing their thing, and which is different, slightly different from the next person. And so, I think it's missing. I think it's missing in particularly in the claims world today. And, I hope we start to figure that out a little bit, or at least I hope we start to have, more leaders kind of getting built into the mix that understand it is a, human-centered world and a people-first business. And if you're not training people to be good thinkers and empathetic and analytical, we're going to wind up with just a lot of task processors.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not giving away any like Cruiser Mitchell trade secrets here. But we have a training program for our associates. We're developing right now a new training to teach them how to write initial reports for insurance companies, because it's something that we assume that they know how to do, but nobody ever taught them how to do it. Like what goes into the liability analysis, what goes into the evaluation, right? And so we're going to actually sit down with our first year associates and go through each one piece by piece. And this is how you do it. Because as we all know, lawyers are super busy right now. The insurance companies are super busy right now. There's more work than we can handle, but we're thinking like, if the associates are producing higher level work that the partners don't have to sit down and think, oh gosh, it's going to take me 5 hours to go through this. Hopefully it'll save time in the long run too.
Yeah.
It's teaching them how to think like a lawyer and teaching somebody how to think like a claims examiner. Like it's very strange. And there's like a lot of intuition and it's innate, but there are some nuances that have to be taught.
Yeah. I remember very early in my career, that same partner that Dana told me I should get to know you. I remember I handed him like my first big report to him, and I was like super proud of it. And I had like worked what I thought really hard on it. And immediately he came down to my office like, Megan, this needs work. Because I didn't dig into like the liability. Like I was just like, I didn't do what you should have done. But like in my defense, no one had taught me that before.
You were writing like a lawyer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we hire you to do, but at the same time, we want you to write to us and tell us the key points that we're interested in, but we may not have told you what those key points are, by the way. We just want you to know.
I was essentially writing like a memo for a writing class in law school, because that's how I knew how to do it. And like he was like, they don't care. It's like they don't really even care about the case law. Well, don't even waste your time putting in there. But I didn't know. Like I was never involved in that part of it before. And I remember, and I had a panic. I remember I stayed late that day because I was like, oh my God, I did such a shitty job. And I did do a shitty job, but I learned from it and I fixed it. And then I never made that mistake again. I was like, oh, this is what they need.
Yeah. And Jen, by the way, I'm volunteering. I want to be like a guest speaker in that training program. I would totally do like a class on that and what's important and what not to bury and what to bring up front. And oh my God, that would be like so exciting.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm telling the other person I'm doing this with, we're getting you in.
All right, cool. Because I think there's those secrets, right? We're going to call them trade secrets now. There are these industry trade secrets. And I'll tell you because, on the claims side, I've been on it for so long and people will be like, oh, this report is terrible. Or, oh, I had somebody once, at one of the companies I worked for, we had a rating program, after assignments closed, where it was like 3 questions we would ask people to rate the attorney. And so it was, one of it was on kind of, budget and expectations. And one of it was on the overall results. And then one of it was on, availability and meeting expectations, something like that. And then the last question And it was like a sliding scale, each of those. The last question was, would you use this attorney again? Yes or no? And a lot of times that's what we looked at first. So, one of my teams was the litigation vendor management team. So, we were the ones kind of culling through, my group was culling through all of those. And so anytime something came up as a no, would you use this attorney again? And it was no, obviously that, kind of always came to the top of the pile. And then we wanted to dig in a little bit more and understand. So this one attorney who, it was a firm that got a lot of our work. This attorney did a lot of our stuff. And so I went over, the person that answered it, was in my office. And so I went over to her and I said, I'm going to use a fake name, Susie. Susie, I saw that you said this, you wouldn't use this attorney again, but you rated them very highly in every other category. But yet, was that an error? And she goes, no. She's like, they were fantastic, but their reports are so long. And the way that they wanted to have conversations with me, I just didn't have the time for that. Like, they got it, they did everything, but everything was so drawn out. And it's like they wanted to pontificate every time we had a conversation, or like they were writing a paper every time they sent me a report. And she's like, and I just didn't have time for that. She's like, so I can't. I need the meat, I need this, and I want to move on. Yes. And I was just like, and so to your point, right, of this kind of story, it's like, it's like there are these secrets of how you work and how you prefer to work, but I guarantee you, you're not having conversations when you get an assignment from a claims person about, hey, how do you like to get reports? How do you like to be communicated with? Like, we kind of miss those, right? We kind of keep it very focused on, we need these reports and we need this, and we're going to file this motion and this and that, but we don't actually have those conversations like, hey, how can we best work together?
Yes. Well, we talk about that a lot, about trying to have those conversations, because I don't know why people think they're uncomfortable, but I think there's this like feeling like that's an uncomfortable conversation. I'm like, there's nothing uncomfortable about that. Like, if you are saying, hey, I've never worked with you before, this is our first file, this is what I typically do, but what would you like to see? And I recently had this come across, and like, frankly, I put that out there, and the adjuster just didn't respond to that. And I was like, well, I asked, and they didn't tell me, so I'm just going to do it how I was planning to do it. And but at least I threw it out there to be like, how would you like me to communicate? This is what I typically do. And I got nothing back. So I was like, well, maybe they're okay with what I said. We'll find out.
But I think it's important. I think it's great, that you're asking and kind of doing that. I mean, it's almost like when you have a new manager, right? Or you have like a new hire, and you tend to have those conversations. You might do it in an interview. You might do it, their first week on, but it's like, hey, how do you like to be, managed? How do you like to be kind of, educated in this space? And we should do the same things with our business partners, right? It's the same thing. It's like, we should all be very clear about that and say, hey, I really don't want to see anything past 2 pages. I have a really high pending and I just don't have time for that right now. And if you feel like you need to go past 2 pages, then put like the highlights, give me a 10 bullet point highlight on the first page. And then I'll, be able to kind of like pick through and go through the rest when I have it. But at least, give me a starting point. Don't build the story, right? That's the other thing we do really well as, I think, claims people and lawyers is we like to build, right? We're building up the story like it's a movie, and then we're going to kind of hit, the climax or the punchline or whatever. But in the meantime, it's like, okay, but I really could have done like 10 other things as we built this story, right? I really needed to know up here, and then maybe I just wanted to go to page 3 to read more details on that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have that. It's a good, healthy dialogue, and tying that back to what I said earlier about unrealistic expectations and everything on a faster pace. I think if you try to have those conversations up front with people, it hopefully shortens, the timeline, and also gives you a little bit, as attorneys, gives you a little bit more license to kind of do what you do best without trying to be something that you're not, because you think that somebody wants, this really long report that they really don't want.
Yeah. I used to work with someone that brilliant attorney, but like very detailed. And the reports would be, 14, 16 pages long and full of detail, but on really complex claims. And I didn't disagree with the reporting in the sense that I thought a lot of the information was necessary. It just also needed an executive summary. You know, like, here, I'm going to pour my heart and soul into this 14-page document that really picks apart the issues in this product's claim. But like, you also need to give like the Cliff Notes version up front too. So it's here if you need it. Because I especially with the claims like that, like they can be very detailed and very specific about certain things, and those details could be important later, but maybe not. Like, also maybe buried on page 7. You know, so you have to know your audience.
Yeah, for sure.
And the one thing, there's another attorney at our firm who he worked in claims for 25 years. And the one major disagreement that he and I have, I would hate when an attorney would send me their report and then bury the updates in the report. And he was like, no, I loved it, especially if they highlight it. I was like, no, it should be in a separate summary on the top. I could see that, put it in my file, you know, change my analysis and move along. But like things like that, if you've never had the conversation with your claims professional, like, you would not know which way do they prefer. Like, do they hate that? Then don't do it.
Or do they, you know, if they don't know that you're doing that, do they read the first page and not see anything new and stop reading? Right. Because they didn't know that page 3 had highlighted updates. Right. And listen, people do that, right? Claims people do that. They're like, okay, I don't think that there's anything new in here. I got to move on. And meanwhile, it's like, yeah, the most important thing was buried on page 3 or 4, but you just didn't know it because you never got there because it didn't look like anything changed. I'm with you, Jen. I like it up front. Give it to me all up front. I will go likely and read more details on it if you tell me, you know, more details on page 3, but give it to me on page 1, right? Give it to me on the first half of page 1 so I can at least, you know, manage my time and understanding of where I need to focus.
Yes.
It's funny. I used to work for a carrier that they specifically had a form that they wanted you for your initial report, and every report thereafter you had to use the initial report and then cross out, or I think it was bold or highlight the new information, and each report just added on to that first one. And by the end, it was nonsense. Like, I was like, why do they like this? It is literally like maybe they wanted to see in real time like how things changed over time, but it was a mess. Like, it did not read well. It was super confusing, but that was in their guidelines. Like, that was how they wanted it, so you did it because that's how they wanted it. But I was like, this is asinine. Oh, and by the way, you only had 2 hours to do it.
Right.
We want the most
If you put more time in, we're going to cut it.
2 hours only. You're like, okay. It would take 2 hours to just type it, like just typing it when it was already written. It would take that long, but it was what they wanted, so that's what you did.
Well, I got us super off track of your career and ran to training. But you talked about then you moved to a commercial carrier.
Yes.
And then what was your trajectory from there?
From there, that was great. I mean, I loved that, and I really started to dig into coverage a little bit more. And then I was, you know, kind of moved into the company I was with at the time, moved into, you know, what we called like our national litigation unit. So doing all kind of like the heavy, you know, coverage and defense litigation across the country, which was super exciting. So I would do, you know, anything from trucking to intellectual property, you know, patent infringements, things like that. So it was super exciting and interesting. Construction, you know, it ran the gamut. And so that was amazing. Then, you know, when I started to want more and I felt like I was getting a little stunted, I had switched companies. And then, you know, I spent a good chunk of my career, you know, 16 years with Markel, which is an amazing company, and, you know, was given a ton of opportunities and assignments, you know, internationally. And my first management role was with them. And then, you know, that just, you know, led to a lot of career development, working internationally in London and Toronto, doing corporate projects down in Richmond, Virginia, which was the domestic headquarters, you know, doing some underwriting projects, claims projects. It was, and I didn't even know I was a project manager. I was part of a leadership program that they had. And then the leader of that leadership program called me one day and said, you know, we'd like you to be, I was actually in London at the time, called me and said, you know, we'd like you to be senior project manager on our corporate restructuring, a project that we called One Markel. the domestic restructuring of all of our North America operations. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy here and I'm not a project manager. And, she was just like, we want to do this. We need you here. We really need your skill. And then she had kind of like the chairman call me and said, it's not really. And I was like, no, really, I like it here. I think I'm going to stay for a couple more years. I was just talking to, at the time, my boss Stuart about this, and we've done all the paperwork for me to stay. And he was like, yeah, it's not really a request. It's, and I was like, oh, okay. So I'm coming back. I'm trading London for Richmond, Virginia. I wasn't really fair on the geography swap, but it was great. I didn't know how great it was going to be in just kind of recognizing that my mind works like a project manager, and other people saw that. I was very, grateful that other people saw that and kind of insisted that that's how my mind operated. And it was, great project, very successful. I had a lot of exposure and just got to experience more of, the business side, and then also on the underwriting side, and appreciate more of those brokering relationships. Because that project, we were taking 9 individual companies and merging them into 5 underwriting regions was phase 1 of that. And so, a lot of broker shakeup, right? So relationships, because underwriters build their relationships with brokers. And now we were changing that because we were going to a regional model. So it was now, relationships were changing and those handoffs and what they looked like. And it was, it was really fascinating to me to kind of experience that side, because I had spent up until then, my career on the claim side.
Yeah.
And then we wound up, once we finished that project, then we did the claim side. Again, we took, 9 different claims departments and merged them into one. And that was a lot. That took a while. It happened pretty quickly, but then settling in and settling down took, a few years for people to really adjust to that new model. But all of that was just such a great experience. And also kind of helping people through it, right? So kind of when I think back to what I said in the beginning about I like to help people, that those types of projects really let me focus on people and the impact of people and trying to get them on board, which is a good balance for me, because I'm really kind of very driven person. And so sometimes I just run like a train barreling down and trying to get stuff done. And it's good when I'm forced to kind of pull back and say, hey, all right, how can we bring people along? How can we get people on board with this? Then it became a challenge for me to say, I need to convince these people that this is going to be a good thing and that they need to trust. And, luckily people did trust. And so, it turned out to go really well. And then, then that, again, it just kept opening doors for me. Then they were asking me to stand up different departments and, open a Toronto claims office and, and just keep doing different things that really kind of fed into my builder mentality. I like to do those things. I like to create. And, I often describe one of my superpowers as I see things sometimes, and I see how things are going to lay out, and I see how things are going to unfold. And I can't always describe how it comes to me, but it's just a feeling that I get. And so I like kind of building, right? Building and transforming is just really deep in my DNA. And I come from a family of teachers, so maybe it's like that teacher thing when you're building, right? You're building knowledge and intelligence and developing young minds. But yeah, so, and then I just, kept going, right? I just kept going and kept saying yes. I think that's really where I go to. If somebody asks me to do something, I say yes.
Do you think that's a byproduct of when they asked you to come back from London and you're like, and they said, no, you're coming back from London, and it turned into such a positive that did that kind of make you say yes going forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about it that way, Jen, but yeah, now that you say it that way, I think I learned in that moment and through that experience that if you're open to things that other people see for you, they can turn out to really be amazing experiences. And then be part of who you are as a person in your development. So maybe that was kind of a catalyst for my yes movement. But yeah, and that's the one thing I feel like when I'm mentoring younger people, I talk about that. And I said, if somebody offers you something and gives you an opportunity, even to take you outside of your comfort zone, just say yes. You know, if you were handling property claims and somebody says, hey, we really need somebody in professional liability, and you're saying, what? These things are not like the other, you know, just say yes. Because if somebody's asking you, typically, it's not because they're desperate. It's really because they see something in how, you know, you work or how your mind operates. And so that's a good thing. And, you know, just say yes, because at minimum, it exposes you to something else.
Right. Yeah, exactly. At a minimum, you get a new skill set out of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, then you could say, oh, I did work on personal lines, hated it, but I did it. Or, you know, or you find a new path too. If anything, it just builds up your roster of experience. So, you know, you're more familiar with more things and it makes you more marketable.
Yeah.
I wanted to backtrack quickly though on this. So, because you like gloss over living in London as if it was like this little thing, like, and I know it has nothing to do really with claims specifically, but like, how long did you live there, and how was that transition? Like, I've never had the opportunity to live anywhere else but the United States. So, like, what stage were you at in your life? Like, I'm assuming you didn't have your daughter yet. So
No.
were you like single and fancy free in London, like living your best life?
I was single-ish. I, you know, was actually living with somebody at the time in the US when this opportunity popped up. And so, but, you know, things weren't really going well and it ended up not working out. So I said yes, you know, and interestingly, it's like you kind of know that it wasn't working out because I said yes before even like having a conversation with him. And it's like that's not always the best thing, but it kind of tells you how you feel about, you know, that relationship, right? That you weren't even concerned about, you know, leaving somebody behind. So yeah, so I you know, so I was single and it was great. I mean, Markel was so amazing and generous. It was Markel International, the international piece that I was working for at the time. And so they put me in a flat in London, you know, in London proper. So it was amazing. And I got to live in the city. You know, it was a little scary just because I was going by myself, not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
You know, I knew one person, you know, the head of claims in the London office. That's the one person I, you know, had met before. So it was hard. And I will say as an American going and working probably anywhere in Europe, but London in particular, you know, with the Lloyd's market and all the syndicate companies, you know, a lot of history there, right? A lot of depth. I mean, if you want to go a place where claims is a very noble profession, London is the place. And it was a great experience for me because I felt like up until that point in my career, when I would tell people I was in insurance and on the claim side, you know, people are like, ugh. And then they tell you a horrible story that they had claims experience, right? And you're like, okay, or they want to talk about health insurance. And I'm like, well, I don't do health insurance. So, but going over there, you know, when I was out and about and meeting people, and you know, I'm pretty social, and so, and I don't mind going places by myself. I feel like I can meet people anywhere and assimilate. And so, when I would talk to people and meet a stranger and they say, oh, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm in insurance. I'm on the claim side. Oh, and they wanted to have a whole conversation about it. And I was like, wow, this is like a great experience to be somewhere where you don't feel like you have to shrink down and apologize for your career choice, that people are actually excited to talk to you and want to learn more. So London was absolutely amazing. I felt so comfortable there. I think I was, you know, born and raised in the US, but I really feel like I'm a European at heart. And I love everything about how they work super hard, but then they also balance that very well with personal time and play time, and don't really take themselves all that seriously, even though it's, you know, kind of a serious environment. So I really enjoyed kind of every aspect of that. And I didn't want to leave. I mean, I loved it there. I made friends there. You know, I was dating over there. Like I didn't want to leave. It started out as 6 months with hopefully a 2-year extension. And then, so we were doing that. And so all in, I was probably there 9 months when I, you know, wound up coming back to do this other project in Virginia. But it was fabulous. And one of the best things personally is with bank holidays and long weekends and things like that. I mean, so easy to travel. So I was traveling, all over the UK, going to different countries, on a short weekend, a long weekend. It's just so easy and economical to travel over there to a lot of different countries. So, and I'm pretty good company. I learned traveling by myself to all these different countries that I'm pretty good company. I'm kind of cool to hang out with. So I didn't mind going on my own. And it's a different experience traveling on your own. You get to do whatever you want to do. So that's kind of nice. You don't have to appease anybody else.
I feel like
and the way you started this. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say,
I was going to say the way you started this. Oh.
I think we have a delay again. We're good.
We do. I was going to say, the way you started this, it sounded like a book that I've read. The main character has like his live-in boyfriend, like unsure about it, gets his job offer, moves to London, and then you meet someone at an art gallery, and the rest.
It's like a Hallmark movie. Maybe I can write a script, Megan. You're giving me like a side hustle here.
I always had that in the back of my mind.
I was going to say something very similar. It sounds like if this were 2025, when you went through that, you would be an influencer. Like you'd have like a TikTok or an Instagram channel, and you'd be live streaming for everyone to follow along.
Yeah, it's probably true. I mean, so this was in
very
2008.
Emily in Paris.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. This was in 2008. We still had Blackberries. Different time. We still had phones that barely took pictures, right? So we had flip phones that didn't even, some of them took pictures, but they were really bad black and white ones, right?
Oh, they were terrible. Yeah. Although, totally sidetracked, but we were in Target over the weekend, and my daughter was begging me. I had to buy it. They had these $5 digital cameras, and she was wanting one. I was like, how good could this camera be? She's like, isn't it so cute? I'm like, it's adorable, but she's like, I don't know how I'm gonna get the pictures off it. I'm like, I don't know either. I think it's like a toy. I don't know what you're doing with this thing, but it was $5, so I don't care.
So speaking of teenage daughters, at what point in your career then did you end up, starting a family, and kind of how did that impact your trajectory?
Yeah, so I didn't think I was ever going to get married. And so I was really happy and, living life and traveling, and had an amazing niece and nephew, only, one niece and one nephew at the time. My older sister had 2 kids. I was fantastic at being an aunt. And so I was pretty happy with my life, and all my friends, were getting married and having kids and all that. And they kept saying, oh, you gotta date, you gotta do this. I'm like, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with where I am. And so I was in my mid to late 30s, and I think I was still going back and forth from Virginia a lot. And so I was home, one weekend, and went out with a bunch of my girlfriends, and they actually put me on Match.com. This is probably a longer story than it needs to be. But after a few drinks, they were like signing me up for Match.com. And then the next morning I slept at one of their houses, and I woke up, and my friend and her husband are sitting on their couch when I come out of the guest room, and they start laughing. And they're like, you might want to look at your Match.com profile and make sure, and I was like, no, did that really happen last night? I thought that was a dream or a nightmare. And so anyway, I share that story because I was in my late 30s at the time, and, met my husband through Match.com, and he lived in Manhattan. I lived in New Jersey. And so that's how we met. And then it was, we got married. We got engaged pretty quickly. I guess it was about 6 months after we met, he proposed. But we were older, right? We were kind of in our late 30s at that point. So, and then we got married, 8 or 9 months later, and then had my daughter a couple years after that. We had a few miscarriages, so that was unfortunate, and I know people don't really talk about it, but it's something people should talk about more, because I think there's more of us that relate to those things than we admit to, and it definitely forms a part of who you are and what you think about when you say family. And when somebody says, how many kids do you have, right? And you say 1, but you're like, what? More feel like I have more than 1, they're just angels. And so, but yeah, so then by the time I had Mackenzie, I was almost 40. And so I think I turned 40, she was 6 months old. when 5 months old, maybe when 5 or 6 months old when I turned 40. So it was late. I was I was an older parent for sure. But it was amazing. So for me, the hardest thing about having a child at that age was I was so invested in my career and had the luxury of being very selfish for many years and completely being focused on that, and really that being the largest part, if not sometimes the only part of my identity, was being kind of like a, badass professional, trying to break glass ceilings, trying to support other women. And so then all of a sudden it's like, whew, now I have to be, even when I was, got married, I still had that freedom, but then all of a sudden you're responsible for a life and a girl at that, who you're like, hey, I want to make this world better for you. And you're just kind of like, ooh, okay, now I need to be a different person, right? I need to have that 2.0 version. Still working through that. She's 13 and I'm still working through that.
Yes. And it's so funny because I was on the flip side. I was 29 when I had had my first daughter, which isn't that young, but it's young. And after law school, I really didn't have a ton of time that I like did the grind right before I had her. And so then now I have 3 kids by the time I'm 33, and I'm like, oh my God, like now what do I do? How am I supposed to go back to doing that with kids? Right. And so it took so long before I feel like I really got back into my career. So I feel like as women, if we choose to be mothers, like it doesn't matter what time of your career you do it. There's pluses and minuses for sure.
And I think we're so hard and critical of ourselves that we always think we're doing it poorly. And, we would have said, oh, I should have had kids earlier. Oh, maybe I should have waited. I should have built my career. And then I get like, we are so hard on ourselves. But I think you're 100% right, Jen. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you did it when you were 20, if you were 25, 29, if you were, 39. It's challenging. It's difficult. It's very rewarding. But it's just, it's hard, right? It's hard no matter what way you do it. It's just different.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember I was like, I'm kind of I was in the middle of both of you, I think, because I was like younger than Dana, but older than Jen. But remember when I had my oldest also going to be 13. So we all teenage girls, which is lovely. But I remember when I was pregnant, worrying about a few things. One, how is this thing going to come out of me, and how am I going to survive that? Because there seemed no good way. And then I was like, how am I going to work after this? Like, how is that all going to, and I was because I was before like putting in more hours and working late. And I was like, well, I can't, daycare closes at 6. So now like, how is this going to work? And I remember being so stressed about that. And then I was like, I'm never going to see a good file ever again. They're just going to give me all the crap cases. And like, I'm never going to make partner. I'm never in, just so worried about all the things. And I remember talking to one of my friends about it. She's like, you just do it. And it ends up working. Just trust me. You'll do it and it'll work. And I did it and it worked. It's all kind of a blur, but it just kind of just made it work. I worked from home secretly and just didn't tell anybody. Like that seemed to work for me. Like the daycare pickup, it just kind of worked. I don't know, but we made it through, and now we have teenagers. So, and that's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. Have kids, they said. That'll be super fun. What's funny? No one, and I want to see if you guys feel the same way. No one in my friend group. So I was lucky that I had all of my friends, my very close friends, had kids way before I did, because, even way before I got married. So I got to see a lot of them kind of experience all of this. And then, so when I was pregnant and they're telling you, and, my daughter's young and they're telling you about all these different things and they're on all the stages they're going to go through and everything's a phase. And I notice now when we talk about those things, those phases and stuff stop at like age 5. Nobody talks about what happens after that. And I think before people decide to have children, I think they should explain to you what happens during those, puberty and teenage years, because, you go from this, I mean, my daughter will kill me for saying it this way, but you go from this like absolutely, amazing little human who is curious and sweet and loves her parents and wants to glue herself to my leg. And it's just, well, let me dress her in anything, and just open to every experience. And then all of a sudden you get this person that you're like, what happened? I feel like this person was possessed overnight, and now I have a different child. They look the same. I still see elements of those characteristics that I love so much, but then they become a monster, sometimes. And look, I'm sure I was that way, right? Because I'm not throwing stones from my glass house over here, because I say that to my mom all the time. I'm like, I don't know how you didn't kill one of us, because you should have, right? Like, I have one kid and I don't know how you managed, 4. But it's just kind of like, nobody talks about those teenage years until you're in it. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, it gets better. Don't worry. All my friends that have kids that are in college and out of college, they're like, it's okay. They come back to you during or after college. It'll be fine. But like, that's all anyone is saying. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. It's tough. You'll get through it. It'll pass. I'm like, will it?
I guess I worry, like I feel the same way, because before, like I still have my younger one who's like still lovely for the most part, but my my older one would tell me everything, and she would always like be chatting about everything, and this is very recent. I'm suddenly being like, she's not talking. Like, and then I start to worry, and I'm like, what's she hiding? What's going on? But then I don't want to be that overbearing, like, annoying mom. But I'm already now, I've now crossed the line that I'm now annoying. Like, I'm not her favorite person to hang out with anymore. And and then you start to worry. I'm like, is this it? Was this the extent of it? Like, she's not gonna like me for a while. Like, how am I gonna do this?
The other day, my mom was here, and we were sitting and talking to my 13-year-old, and she was having like an existential crisis about like whether she should go to basketball practice or dance practice or something like that. And she's crying, and I should do this, and we're trying to walk her through it. And she finally got up and left the room. My mom looks at me and whispered, she goes, "You weren't like that." I was like, like, even my mom was like, I don't even know what to do.
It is, and you know what? It's true. We were different versions of it, right? Because now it's like the models for behavior and was all local to us, right? When we were growing up. And now the models for their behavior is TikTok and Snapchat and YouTube and whatever else that I don't know, because I'm so cringe and old, right? It's like, I don't know what any of these things are. And so, or at least that's what she tells me. I think I know more than she gives me credit for. But it's just like, so it was different. Right now they have this different level of exposure to not just, what's locally available to them, but all around the globe, which is just kind of incredible. I mean, it is scary, because I'm sure we can all relate to, they can get influenced by a lot of things that we never see and we're not exposed to. And even, in school, right? They're watching videos and they're online doing research, and, and now with AI and, all of that, like it is different. And, I say that I've always said I was an old school parent, and I am, because I, grew up in much simpler times. But it's like, it is hard to keep pace with what is going on. And then that's why sometimes I feel like it's hard almost to relate. And I see almost a difference in, younger parents that have children the same age as mine, but they're much younger than me. And it's like, some of them do it a little bit better, I guess, because it's a little closer to their understanding. But I think it's just hard in general for most of us to relate to what they are exposed to, the pressures that they feel, and, and how easily it is to get influenced from a lot of different places.
Yeah. And I've also noticed too, like with the socials, like how much they put out there about their inner feelings, which is helpful, because I can be like, oh, okay. But also like, why are you putting this out there? Like, because like we would never have talked about any of that, right? Like that, any of like anything that you're thinking on the inside, like you didn't advertise it. And now, like I mean, how I figure out what's happening in my daughter's head if she's not telling me is look at her TikTok reposts. Because I was like, oh, okay, this is how she's feeling about this shoot. But sometimes I'm like, you might want to let the world know like how you feel about this right now. Like maybe can you post it privately so you feel validated that you put it out there, but no one's seeing it. But then at the same time, like they do talk. I feel like they do talk to each other more about feelings than at least I ever did. I never talked to any of my friends or my parents about my feelings.
It's just really difficult, and as Meghan knows, so we don't allow our kids yet to have any sort of social media, Snapchat, TikTok, but that doesn't mean that they're not seeing it. Like you said, like
Right.
they're at school and they're on other people's phones. I don't mind if she looks at it on my phone, except for the fact that she messes up my FYP on TikTok. I don't like that. But there's nothing, I can maybe say you can't have it on your phone, but that doesn't mean that they're not being exposed to it or they're not seeing it. You know, there's no way that any parent can control that. And I also think it's unwise because it's there and it's happening, you know, and like we talk about AI and how she's like, well, you use it with work. And I showed her and I said, well, I use it, but I never rely on it. I fact check it. I make sure it's right. I was like, I would never let ChatGPT write a brief for me and then just like something like that. Like I would never, but I said it sometimes can be helpful. And I showed her what I use it for. Or if I'm trying to help her with math, I asked ChatGPT how to do it because I don't know. And I can't figure it out on my own. Right. So like I don't know. It's like really difficult trying to parent with the things that are out there today that we weren't exposed to and how to not stick our head in the sand and pretend that it's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's exhausting too, right? I mean, I'm with you. Like you have to get the help. I mean, you know, for goodness sake, most days Alexa's another member in our family, right? The speaker sitting on the counter, you know, she's actively engaged in homework discussions and, you know, all kinds of things. So yeah, but it's like, you know, we rely on these things, but then, you know, there's a part of us that resent them too. But yeah, you just have to. And so all of that kind of saying, I do think it is harder to be a teenager now than it was, you know, when I was a teenager. And I'm glad I did not have to live in a world where everything was recorded or potentially recorded, you know, from now until kingdom come, because, you know, we did some pretty crazy things as teenagers that no one really has to know about. And we only remember once in a blue moon if we're, you know, telling stories of yesteryears.
Yeah. But I do hope some of it leads to some smarter choices. I don't know if it will, but I know I made some pretty dumb choices and I was like, whew, I'm glad I made it out of there without getting caught. But I think with everything now, I think it's a lot harder to like get away with anything. My parents had no idea where I was, like not a clue. And now I'm like, I know where they are at any moment, and they know like they're not allowed to turn off their locations. You know, sorry, I got a notification my battery is running low.
We've all turned into helicopter parents, right? Unwittingly.
Yes.
Like it's like because of the tracking and location services and all, and 360, right? And all of that, like 360, all of those things. It's like, it's crazy. I'm like, yeah, my parents had no idea where I was.
No.
Mm-mm.
I was out and about all day and then would come back. And So yeah, interesting. It's an interesting time for them for sure.
Well, if you can't believe it, we've already like we've already chatted forever. And Dana, I could probably keep talking to you for hours. I think we could have a whole podcast about parenting teens.
Yeah.
But I don't want to close this up without, you know, celebrating, like highlighting you a little bit more too, in that, you know, you're currently, you know, you are out there looking for your next role, and you're a dynamic person. And I you know, since this will be out there, you know, what ideally, what kind of role are you looking to fall into or find?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I'm currently I'm through a transition right now. And it's, you know, half exciting, half scary for sure. I've never, you know, I've gone, you know, 29 years in insurance, but I've been working for like 32 years or whatever. And so, and have never not worked. And so, yeah, it's an interesting time, but and I appreciate all of that, Megan. I really do kind of appreciate you and Jen more than words will adequately describe right now. And I'm looking for roles that is really going to stretch me as a person. So I really, ideally in my mind, I say I want, chief claims officer, head of claims roles. But I think in my heart, I still have a lot of, operationally focused things. So I am, contemplating COO type roles too for, different organizations. And I'm really just trying to be open to different opportunities that sound fun and exciting. I want to propel the industry forward. I want, us to get modernized as an industry. I also want to bring a little bit more of that human and personal element back and not be so kind of, everything has to be turned around in 30 seconds. And spending a little bit more time thinking about things and, understanding what our role is in the claims world and how important that is to people's lives, to businesses staying afloat, et cetera. So I'm really just, for me, it's more of a value proposition. It's where can I add value and what company or people's values are going to align with mine. That's really my goal.
Well, I don't know what happened to Megan, but I really hope that you end up where you're meant to be, because I do think that you will add so much value. I mean, you just have so much experience and just bring such a positive energy to wherever you go. And so any company is really will be lucky to have you.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm excited. I really am excited to see what I do next. So we'll all stay tuned for that.
Well, I think Megan's computer must have died and shut off. So we will wrap things up here. And thank you so much for joining us. And for everyone, if you liked what you heard, you can listen to us on any of your platforms where you normally get your podcasts.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.